Hey there, investing iguanas. It's Iggy here, and I've got some exciting news for you. We're shaking things up a bit on the channel, and I can't wait to share it with you. First off, I want to introduce you to Ivan and Irene, our awesome new podcast hosts. These two are absolute whizzes when it comes to finance, and they're here to bring you fresh, relevant content in a whole new way. So, what's the deal with this podcast format? Well, we figured it's time to make finance even more digestible. Ivan and Irene will be chatting about all things money, from stocks to CPF schemes, in a casual, easy to follow conversation. It's like eavesdropping on two finance experts at a coffee shop, minus the awkwardness of actually doing that. This new format is all about making complex financial topics feel less daunting. Whether you're commuting, working out, or just chilling at home, you can tune in and soak up some financial wisdom. Don't worry though, I'm not going anywhere. You'll still see me around, breaking down the numbers and giving you the scoop on the latest market trends. This podcast is just another way for us to help you level up your financial game. So, are you ready to meet Ivan and Irene? Let's go.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We're tackling estate planning in Singapore today. And wow, you weren't kidding when you said you wanted a thorough look.
Yeah, we've got a lot to work with here.
That's an understatement. Legal pros, kith and kin, the ever-so-detailed tree of wealth, finance wizards over at Manulife.
Even straight from the Singapore government, right?
You bet. Talk about getting every angle covered, huh?
Absolutely. It's a fantastic mix of perspectives to draw from. Gives us a really broad view.
Exactly. And one thing that jumped out at me, it's like they all want to debunk this myth that estate planning's just for the super rich.
Oh, definitely. It's not about yachts and offshore accounts, you know?
Right, like, hey, average Singaporean, this means you too.
It's a surprisingly common misconception, though, isn't it? People hear estate planning and their minds go straight to those complex schemes for the ultra-wealthy.
Makes sense in a way.
But the reality here in Singapore, it's a lot more down to earth. Most of us, we've got assets, big or small, that need some careful thought.
Or
Especially...
CPF savings.
Right, exactly. Can't forget about CPF.
The bedrock of Singaporean life, as they say. Kip and Kin did a nice job explaining it. Retirement funds, healthcare safety net.
Housing.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And I'll admit, when I first started reading up on this whole estate planning thing, those CPF nominations kind of threw me for a loop.
It's a bit of a curveball, yeah.
Huh?
A very Singapore thing.
It's like my will doesn't automatically handle that.
It's a separate thing altogether, like having a whole other set of instructions specifically for those funds.
Separate instructions. So if we don't set up these CPF nominations, what happens? Are we really leaving it up to chance?
Well, think about it. You work hard your whole life, contribute to your CPF, but haven't made a nomination. Without that in place, those savings, they wouldn't automatically go to your loved ones. The Intestate Succession Act kicks in and...
Don't leave me hanging.
It might not line up with what you actually wanted. Your wishes might not be carried out the way you intended. And for many Singaporeans, keeping things within the family, it's incredibly important, right?
Absolutely. Family's everything. So yeah, that's a pretty powerful reminder right there. Even with something as, I don't know, essential as CPF, having a plan is crucial.
100%. It all ties back into what estate planning really is, you know? It's not just about death and taxes. The Singapore government website actually defines it as managing and distributing your estate after death. But it's way more than that. Making sure your hard-earned wealth ends up benefiting the people you care about most in the way you decide. That's the core of it.
So less about ticking boxes on legal forms, more about making sure our wishes are actually honored.
Precisely.
It's about peace of mind, isn't it? Knowing you've got things in order.
Absolutely, for both yourself and your loved ones.
Makes you want to go draft a will right this second. But I gotta admit, some of this stuff can feel a bit like legal jargon.
It's easy to get lost in the terminology, for sure.
Wills, trusts, LPAs, it's a lot.
Think of it like building your own personalized toolkit, though, for your legacy.
A legacy toolkit, I like that.
Each tool has its own purpose. Understand those, and the whole thing becomes less intimidating.
Okay, makes sense. So let's break down these tools, starting with the big one, wills. Everyone's heard of those, at least.
The cornerstone of any good estate plan. Kith and Kin put it nicely, a legal document that says who gets what after you're gone. But it's more nuanced than that, especially in Singapore with our family structures.
Right, things can get complicated.
Having a well-crafted will, it can be really powerful in those situations.
I'm thinking about my own family. Even we've got blended families, step-siblings, adopted cousins. If I'm not crystal clear about who inherits what, things could get messy.
Exactly. And it's not just about physical possessions either, right? Imagine you have young children. Your will lets you appoint a legal guardian for them, someone you trust.
To make sure they're taken care of.
Exactly. To raise them according to your values in an environment you choose. Without a will, those decisions, they're left up to the courts.
Gives me chills just thinking about that. Okay, wills, check. What about trusts? Those seem a bit next level.
Trusts, they give you more flexibility, more control, you could say. Let's say you have a child with special needs. A trust lets you set aside funds specifically for them, managed by someone you designate.
So even when you're not around to manage it directly.
They're still taken care of. Kith and Kin also talked about asset protection, say, if you have a family business. A trust can shield those assets from creditors, even from beneficiaries who might mismanage things.
Smart. Protecting what you've built, especially in a place like Singapore, where everyone's entrepreneurial.
Okay, trusts, check. Last tool in our legacy toolkit, lasting power of attorney, or LPA. This isn't about what happens after we're gone, though, is it?
You got it. It's different. LPA is about giving someone you trust the power to make decisions on your behalf. If you can't.
If you're incapacitated. Right.
Exactly. The government website does a good job explaining it. Illness, accident, whatever the reason. This covers decisions about your personal welfare, property, finances, big stuff.
So say if I were in an accident and couldn't communicate, my LPA could step in, make medical decisions for me even.
That's the idea. They act according to your wishes. You're giving them the legal authority to make sure your voice is still heard, even if you can't speak for yourself. Wow. This is making me think about all sorts of what-if scenarios I never even considered before.
That's what this deep dive is all about. Getting us to ask those tough questions. The what-ifs we tend to avoid, but really shouldn't. And remember, estate planning isn't just about the money. It's about protecting your values, your wishes, your legacy.
Makes you realize there's more to think about than just the physical stuff, right?
Oh, absolutely. Especially these days. Tree of Wealth really hit on something that's becoming more and more important. Digital assets.
It's a whole other world, isn't it? Our online lives.
It's easy to forget about it in the grand scheme of things, but it's a big deal. Our online bank accounts, cryptocurrency if you're into that, even just our social media profiles.
It's all valuable in its own way.
Financially, sentimentally, and it needs to be factored in. Tree of Wealth really emphasized that having clear instructions for those digital assets in your estate plan.
Right, like what happens to my Facebook account after I'm gone? Do I want it memorialized? Who gets to decide that?
Those are important questions. And who gets access to your online accounts? Those details matter.
It's like needing a digital executor. Someone to handle your online afterlife.
In a way, yeah. It highlights a point that often gets overlooked. Estate planning, it's not a set it and forget it kind of thing.
Right, it's not like writing a will and tossing it in a drawer, never to be thought of again.
Life changes, you get married, have kids, your assets grow, technology evolves. Your estate plan needs to keep up.
Especially here, right? Synchro moves fast.
Exactly. And with technology advancing at warp speed, who even knows what the future holds? Tree of Wealth even touched on some wild stuff like AI-powered estate planning and using blockchain to automate asset distribution.
Now that's getting futuristic.
Right. It's a lot to wrap your head around, but it shows you just how much this whole field is changing.
Definitely makes you stop and think.
The main takeaway is to be proactive, informed, and to keep those conversations going. Don't be afraid to ask the tough questions.
Because ultimately it's about taking control, right?
Exactly. Even after you're gone, your estate plan is your voice. It's about making sure your values, your wishes, the things that matter to you, they live on. That's powerful.
I couldn't have said it better myself. This deep dive has been eye-opening, to say the least. So to our listener out there, hopefully this gave you a solid understanding of why estate planning is so crucial, especially here in Singapore. It's not just about protecting what you've built. It's about protecting your legacy, your loved ones, and making sure your wishes are honored now and in the future, because it's never too early to start planning for that.